What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Episode 23. And 3 light bulbs that link really well together for this week's episode. It's been another great week, a busy week with some client work, a CIPD networking event, podcast recording, workshops, and lots of work being done in the background as well. It's been crossing everything off the to-do list all week. It's been great. This week, the light bulbs work really nicely together, even though they have come from different clients and different client work. First light bulb, I'm just going to get straight into it today. First light bulb, the informal chat before the formal meeting. When to use each one. This came up in the action learning set yesterday with the leadership development program participants. Bit easy for you to say. They're just coming to the end of their 2-year program, got a couple of months left. And yesterday we did an action learning set. They brought real life scenarios to the action learning set to discuss and have the opportunity to explore the challenge with their peers and with my support as well. Now, one of the things that came up was somebody who had an assistant manager, newly promoted, not performing well. And we asked different questions to help them explore what they could do. What could they try? What could they explore? How can they best support this individual? And it brought up the discussion of when to have an informal chat and when to make those conversations more formal, whether you have another line manager present or somebody from HR present. We talked about when to know when to escalate. In my experience, one of the best things you can do as a leader is have those early conversations, early intervention, and informal chats as soon as possible. As soon as you start to see that something is not working or something is starting to shift or a change is starting to happen, those early informal chats can be a great way to make sure that this thing doesn't snowball into something that gets more serious. Not dealing with something, not having that conversation because you're worried about making somebody uncomfortable is not the kindness that you think it is. Because often when we delay getting involved, when we delay that intervention, it snowballs quickly, it escalates quickly, and we end up having a much more uncomfortable, much more serious, and potentially career job ending conversations. Those early intervention, informal chats are incredibly important. Now, that is not to say that you don't document those conversations, that you don't write down what's been covered and follow it up. There is a difference between documenting it and how you approach it. And the informal element is your tone, your pace, your inflection, the location of where you might have that conversation. It's the approach. I would strongly recommend that you document it because you don't know what's going to happen next, and to protect yourself and the individual. The conversation that we had was that the individual was struggling. They were struggling with a couple of areas. They were working long hours in an attempt to try and get the work done. They weren't being transparent about the progress. There was a lack of information that was allowing the manager to be able to support and guide them. And it was starting to creep towards potentially a more formal performance meeting with HR. We had a conversation around whether or not that informal chat had happened, because often when we approach things more casually, more informally, it gives the individual the opportunity to share any underlying issues without the pressure of an official process. You might discover that it's a transition struggle from going from being a senior leader or the most senior person on the team into leadership. It might be that they have something going on at home that is distracting them or draining their energy. It might be that there's a sticking point and they're worried about sharing where they're getting stuck. When we have informal chats, it's the informal approach that creates that safe space for the person to share what is going on from their perspective. It can be dangerous as a leader to make assumptions that we know what's going on, that we have identified what the problem is and therefore will identify what the solution is. When we have an informal chat, we can ask very open questions and we can explore with that individual what's really going on, what the problem is from their perspective, and then potentially what the solution is from their perspective. Informal chats need to happen. Don't avoid it because it's uncomfortable, because those more formal chats are definitely more uncomfortable and can be more difficult. So we want to protect both you and the individual to be able to say that we've had those conversations early on. We've given them the opportunity to share what the problem is and potentially what the solution is. And it means then that they've got the opportunity to have that safe space to be able to share with you what is happening and what support they need. Formal meetings signal the more seriousness element, and they do have their place. Go informal first, document always. If you have identified there's a bit of a challenge with one of your team right now, I would strongly encourage you to put some time in the diary next week to go and have that conversation. Now, Lightbulb 2 kind of links into this, and this is asking them to create their own solution. This is so important because we have experience, we have that expertise, and sometimes we feel that we have that responsibility to come up with the solution. When we ask an individual to come up with a solution, it increases their accountability. It also increases the potential for the solution to be successful, because they are identifying something that they believe will work for them. Whereas when we come up with the solution, we are identifying something that worked for us or something that's worked for other people. And that won't necessarily translate over. You need to be really clear on the expectation that you have. You need to be very clear on what good looks like. You need to be very clear on when that needs to happen. And you'll probably want to be clear on why that is so important. So you need to cover the what, the when, the why. Let them come up with how. Ask them open questions as to what they think would work for them. How do they want to approach this? What do they see as being a solution for the problem that has been identified, or a solution for the outcome that you have identified? It also empowers rather than just telling them what to do. So if we want to increase their confidence, we want to increase self-efficacy, we want them to be self-sufficient, helping them to come up with their own solutions is always going to help with that. We talked about this in the action learning set yesterday. And again, another live example where there's a team member who is just consistently failing to complete what on the surface is a pretty simple task. Don't think it's a knowledge problem. Don't think it's a skills problem, but they're not showing up and doing it. They're not consistent with it. They are not taking action. They're saying that they're going to make it happen, and then it's not happening. We talked around different solutions. The group came up with some different potential solutions, and some of the group shared what they do in similar circumstances. One question that we gave as a group to the individual that brought this challenge to the action learning set was to ask the individual a question. And that question is, what system would work for you to complete this work? Involve them in finding their own solution. When people create their own accountability system, they're invested in making it work. They've designed it, so they own it. Co-created solutions stick because there's a buy-in, but imposed solutions get resisted, sometimes because they feel like punishment. Sometimes it feels like it's not their solution, so they have doubts as to whether or not it's going to work. We need to make sure that they are accountable and that they have a solution in place that they feel they can be consistent with and they feel that they can show up to. If they haven't, they need to design a system that actually works for them. It kind of links in nicely with Lightbulb 1, and it definitely links in with Lightbulb 3. Why psychological safety is so important, and that's because confidence is earned through action. It's not given. You cannot give the people on your team confidence. What you can do is create a psychological safety, is to create a psychological safe environment for them to show up, take action, and earn their confidence through the action that they take. This was a great question that was asked of me by Kevin when we recorded the podcast on Wednesday this week. God, I have to think when that was then. It is out. It's on YouTube. I've pinned it to the podcast list or the interviews list on the YouTube channel, and I've already put out a little clip this morning so that you can see some of the conversation. I was asked about psychological safety. Why is it so important? And for me, it is a foundational leadership principle. It connects to both of those previous light bulbs. We want to create space for informal conversations. We want to co-create solutions, and psychological safety is a huge part of that. If we don't create a safe space, then people won't open up and share what's going on. They'll hide what they think is a problem because they feel that there's blame or shame if they don't do things well or they don't do things right. If we can't give someone confidence, if we can't make somebody self-sufficient, we have to create a space for them to take action, to earn confidence, self-efficacy, self-sufficiency, resilience for themselves. And sometimes that's trying, failing, learning, and trying again. And what good leaders do is to create that space for people to try things they haven't tried before, to start messy, to do things the first time rather than waiting to do things for the first time, even when it's not perfect, not waiting for perfect to start, not waiting for the right time to start, being open to doing things and doing things okay the first time, and then using that as a benchmark of where they want to improve and how they want to get better. When we create that space that creates a culture that says mistakes are lessons, they're not punished, there's no blame, there's no shame. This is what builds confident and resilient teams. When you are confident in your leadership skills, you know that you can support and encourage individuals as they step into a space that is unknown or new to them, and give them that support to try new things, to give things a go, to evolve and increase their capability. You need to create a psychologically safe space for people to do that. The informal chat that I mentioned in Lightbulb 1, that's psychological safety. Giving people the opportunity to come up with their own solutions, that's psychological safety. Both Lightbulbs 1 and 2 both require psychological safety. And your role as a leader is to create that space. How do you create a space where trying and failing is safe? How do you create a safe space where people feel that they can share what they are struggling with, that they can be open and honest if something is happening outside of work that is impacting work? How do you create a space where people can be okay with saying, I'm struggling, I need help, I'm not getting this done in a way that I want to get it done? That's your role as a leader. Create that space that allows all of your team to reach their full potential. And they're not going to do that if they don't feel safe to fail, to get things wrong, and ask for help, support, and guidance. Those are the 3 light bulbs from this week. I could have shared so many more. I really did have trouble this week in whittling them down, but those 3 link so nicely together. It was a good 3 to cover. If this has created a light bulb for you, I would love to hear what that is, and most importantly, how you're going to turn that into action and into a next step in your leadership work. As always, I am here to help, support, and guide you on your leadership journey, so feel free to reach out if you've got any questions. If not, I will be back again next week with episode 24. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Lightbulb.